Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Stowe High School for this evening's presentation about the Worcester Range Management Long Range Management Plan Unit plan. I hope everyone fared well in yesterday's storm and came through relatively unscathed. I'm glad to see you folks here tonight, and hopefully we have a good presentation for you tonight, and we'll be happy to interact with you later this evening. My name is Brad Greeno with the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, and I'm the Stewardship Forester out of the Barre District Office that is fortunate enough to have the responsibility for the management of this very special management unit. I want to thank you and offer your appreciation for folks who generously gave up an evening of their time to attend and participate in the planning process for a land base that is cherished by so many here and that are not here tonight. I am now going to turn it over to Danny Fitzko, who is a Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation, and she will give her opening remarks for this evening's presentation. And once again, thank you for coming. Appreciate your attendance here tonight and your participation. And here's Danny, our Commissioner.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me if I just kind of stand out like this? Okay. Well, welcome to a Worcester Range Management Unit Draft Long Range Management Plan Public Meeting. That is totally a mouthful. And I know, as Brad mentioned, it takes a lot to get out on an evening. We all have so much to do. And I also know we're all feeling a little funny and reeling from the events that happened yesterday. Just another wave of flooding that hit many Vermonters and communities right here in central Vermont, right here in Stowe. I want to start off by sharing what our goal is for tonight. Tonight is an opportunity to learn. An opportunity to learn how the Agency of Natural Resources, our caretakers of this management unit, proposes to manage the unit over the next 20 years. The presentation of the draft long-range management plan is an important step to get your input. After a long process of understanding the land, setting goals, getting additional input from the public during our public scoping process, we now have a strategy and actions in place that we are proposing to manage the land going forward. As you can imagine, we have lots of interest in how we manage state land. Some are very specific. They care about this particular trail or this particular parking lot, and some are just broader. Do more of this or do less of that. Our team of professionals takes all that into account. They learn about the land, and that what we are going to present to you is what we propose is a balanced plan to meet all the public interests. Tonight, our team, we have a robust, amazing team here, will provide a high-level overview of what's in the plan. And then we'll invite you, we'll go out to another room, to walk around the room, meet them, ask questions, and learn more about what's in the plan. Eventually, when you are ready, we hope that you submit public comment. You don't have to do that tonight. Our public comment period is open until February 2nd. Tonight, I keep thinking about it. It's a social. It's a social to get to know the plan and get to meet our experts that have worked so hard to develop the plan. I want to take a moment to recognize our team. They, like I'm sure many of you, care deeply about these public lands. They have spent years developing this draft management plan. I was talking to Bob Zano. Where are you, Bob? Bob Zano, he used to be the state land ecologist. One of his first responsibilities when he started with the state back in 2008 was to do an assessment of the natural communities on this unit. So I can say we've done a lot of assessments. We've been active on the land. We've talked and worked with many users, and they have been thinking about the future of this unit for a long time. We are also really fortunate in Vermont that our approach to planning and management is a team approach. In each of our 5 districts across the state, this team happens to be from the Barre District. Staff from across the 3 departments of the Agency of Natural Resources come together to plan and manage. Each of those individuals comes with their own expertise. That includes fisheries and wildlife biologists, forest health specialists, recreation specialists, ecologists, watershed planner, foresters. This is the richness and diverse expertise and brings a collective voice to the table and how we make informed and wise decisions on our management. I think when you hear them today, you will see how dedicated they are to the work. This is not just a job or the responsibility on behalf of the state. They have passion and they care deeply. I want to thank them all for the great work that they do every day, but in particularly the expertise that they have brought to develop the Strategic Long-Range Management Plan. I feel so fortunate to get to work alongside of them, and I just want you to know that you have a dedicated team of professionals that have worked hard to develop this draft plan and to steward this into the long term. Let's take a moment to recognize what a gem the Worcester Range Management Unit is. With 5 parcels and over 18,000 acres, it is the heart of several communities in central Vermont. It includes popular recreation destinations like the Perry Hill mountain biking trails in Waterbury, or hiking up to Pinnacle, maybe going across Skyline to Mount Hunger with breathtaking views. We have one of the longest or highest waterfall at Moss Glen, and we have the crown jewel in Elmore State Park. Whether you go there to camp, to dip in Lake Elmore, or to trek up Sapphire Tower. And let's not forget about the boundless hunting and fishing opportunities. There are so many ways that we can engage on these public lands and to really debate in them. It's also a place for species to thrive, big and small, with 27 significant natural communities. It's also one of the largest contiguous forest blocks in the state, and it's an important habitat linkage in the region. We have 2 designated natural areas, and over 50% is proposed to be in a highly sensitive management unit. That means it has little management. There's also proposed active management, but maybe looking for enhancing wildlife habitat, but also thinking about healthy and resilient forests for the future. Tonight, let's also celebrate what a gem these public lands are and what they support. They support our overall well-being, biodiversity and conservation, cultural and historical resources, our local economy, research and education. They are a community gathering place, incredible scenic views that are the backdrop of our daily lives, climate change, mitigation and resilience, and so much more. After we give you an overview, please make your way over to the other room and to talk to our team of professionals. Share your stories, your experiences, your ideas, and your concerns. This is your public land, and it's our responsibility to plan for it and manage it, and it's important that we hear from you. So thank you for being here, thank you for wanting to learn more, and when ready, thank you for providing your public comments. So with that, I think I pass it back to Jim.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Fitzko. My name is Jim Duncan. I'm the State Lands Manager for the Forestry Division in Forest Parks and Recreation. I'm pleased to be here to give an overview of this tonight. I'm going to close your organization requires this device to start updates. We'll not do that yet. I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview of our meeting structure. As we kind of talked about, we have some high-level goals for tonight on the agenda, and we're looking to describe our planning process, give you that high-level overview of the plan, and how to provide comments on that plan, and most importantly, opportunities to speak with staff in the cafeteria about proposals for the Worcester Range. The schedules will spend about 45 minutes here in presentation, then we'll move over there for about an hour and 15 minutes. And our first step we're going to do is an overview of the planning process. So to understand our planning process, it's helpful to start with the underlying motivation behind why the Agency of Natural Resources and its 3 departments manage lands and plan for those lands. I'm not going to read these missions, but we do have these mission statements that state a range of goals and mandates encapsulated in these statements that give us underlying charges from the legislature, as well as the people of Vermont, to manage land held in trust by the agency. And these missions and the process we're going through now answer the question of why do we plan and why do we manage land? We use long-range management plans to accomplish kind of 4 major goals. One is actual landscape scale resource planning. We're seeking to balance multiple uses, and part of that is understanding the public desires for the land and which of those we can accommodate based on the missions of each of the A&R departments. And it's really the planning is the foundation of managing thoughtfully, intentionally, and scientifically towards a future state. In the Worcester Range in particular, there was a long-range management plan. It is all the activities in that are pretty much completed. So to continue to actively manage this area for recreation, for passive values, for water quality, for fish and wildlife require a new management plan for the next 20 years. We go through rigorous resource assessments. Apparently they started in 2008 for Bob. And we do resources of forest resources, wildlife resources, water resources. And you're going to hear about those assessments as well as the outcomes of that assessment in terms of management strategies tonight. We did a public scoping exercise in 2020 through a survey to understand the overall desires for this property and our assessment of public interest. And based on both the assessments and scoping, the district stewardship team developed a draft plan. We're in the public comment period now, as highlighted on the screen. And after the public comment period ends, the district stewardship team evaluates those comments and provides a response, summary, addressing points raised, and from there develops a revised management plan. Our goal tonight, as alluded to, is to orient you to the plan and how to provide effective comments. We can't cover everything. It's a long document, so we'll hit some highlights in the next little bit. And we ask you to use the time set aside for the mingling in the open house to ask questions about specific places, specific activities, or specific concepts that you want to hear from our resource experts about. There'll be stations set up around the room that are relevant to you. Just looking at where we are in timeline, we're at the second of 2 public meetings. We did a very similar presentation last week out at Worcester, the Doty Elementary School. We're having this meeting tonight. The comment period is open now, but there's no rush to provide comments. You have time until February 2nd to submit comments. From February to April, we'll be reviewing those comments and making plan updates. I did want to highlight our district stewardship team. There's a bunch of names up here. We have Brad Greeno, our stewardship forester. Sorry, can you stand up or raise your hand just so people know who to find if you have a question later on. Jack O'Reilly, our state lands forester. Dan Singleton, state lands forester. Walter Opasinski, our forest recreation specialist. Nick Caputo, our regional parks manager, is out at the table. Thank you. And Andrew Hirsch, our forestry specialist. From Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have Danielle Osarski, our state lands ecologist, Noel Dodge, our wildlife biologist, Josh Bluen, our wildlife specialist, Dave Adams, habitat specialist, and Brett Latigo, our fisheries biologist. Unfortunately, Keith Fritchie from Department of Environmental Conservation couldn't be here today, but has contributed substantively to the plan. And these folks are the ones who really got into the field, got into the documents, got into meetings, and dug in to develop the plan that we're discussing today. We also have a lot of supporting staff, as you can tell in the room, folks who can help with questions when the time comes. I'm not going to go through all these names, but we're all here and we're looking forward to talking to you as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad, our stewardship forester, to give an overview of the parcel and start us into the resource assessments.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to give an overview of the land base of the Worcester Range Management Unit. There are a total of 18,772 acres in the Worcester Range Management Unit, and it is located in the northern Green Mountain Biophysical Region. Prominent features of the unit include Hunger Mountain, Elmore State Park, the trails at Perry Hill, Stowe Pinnacle, Pinnacle Notch WMA, and the recent Brownsville Forest acquisition located in Stowe. I will now go over the overview of the ownership. The Department of Forest Parks and Recreation manages 94% of the Worcester Range Management Unit, or 17,680 acres of the total management unit. C.C. Putnam State Forest is the largest land base of the unit, totaling 16,685 acres. Also, Elmore State Park is in this unit, and that's almost 1,000 acres in size. The Fish and Wildlife Department manages 811 acres, which includes the Middlesex Notch WMA, which is 625 acres, and the Worcester Woods WMA, which is 186 acres. Adjacent state easements and ownerships includes FPR's 2,281 acre Atlas easement and a 281 acre easement on the Middlesex WMA. On a landscape context, there's adjacent conserved lands, which include the former Atlas lands, the Waterbury Waterworks parcel, the Worcester Town Forest, as well as the Middlesex Town Forest. The WRMU lies entirely within two 45,000 acre highest priority blocks for intact forest and habitat connectivity, and also provides a critical north-south and east-west travel linkage for wildlife. And I will turn that over to Jim.
Thank you, Brad. So I'll go over really briefly the outcomes of our public scoping process that happened in summer of 2020. This was an online survey distributed through a variety of channels. It garnered 723 responses, 96 Vermont towns, and 96% of the respondents Vermonters. It asked people about the activities they engaged in. And as you can see, there's a significant number who engaged in hiking, as well as backcountry skiing and dog walking on the property. There's also a question in there about what management objectives, and you can't probably read the actual text, but from top to bottom, it goes up in priority order. So at the bottom, or the most important to the most number of people, was resource protection. At the top of this graph, which represents the kind of broadest range of interests in management objectives, is economic benefits, direct and indirect. In addition, the survey asked people about what they wanted to see more of, because there isn't enough. It also asked what they want to see less of, or maybe don't need more of because they feel there's already too much. On the left side, we have the not enough graph. Sorry, yep, on your left side, we have the not enough graph. There was a sense from respondents that mechanized or mountain biking use is undersupplied. There's a need for more quiet forest blocks or natural areas, and a need for more universally accessible trails. On the flip side, on the too much, too many graph, we have a large number of respondents saying there are too many motorized recreation trails. Next below that is hunting access, and after that is timber management areas. These four graphs are just a snapshot of a much wider range of analyses and summaries that are available as an appendix in the plan, and individual details on responses are available on request as well. So if you're interested in the public scoping components, definitely check out the appendix to get a lot more insight into some of the initial input we received and incorporated into this plan. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to our first presenter in the resource section, who will give you an overview of their section of the plan and highlights. With that, I'd like to hand it off to State Lands Ecologist Danielle Osarski.
This thing was on initially. I don't know if it turned off. All right, I'll just speak loudly. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, I'll try to keep it at this volume the whole time. All right, so we're going to talk about the ecological and wildlife context of the Worcester Management Unit. So as Brad described earlier, the WRMU is a critical part of an international network of connected forested habitats in the northeastern US and adjacent Canada. The Worcester Range Mountains and their flanks are a critical part of a species corridor connecting the main spine of the Northern Greens to the large forest blocks of Vermont's northeastern highlands. And this has been strengthened through the Worcester Woods easement and conservation of the Woodbury Mountain Wilderness Preserve. The unit also provides connections west to Bolton Mountain and Mount Mansfield, and then south across Route 2 and 89. So you can see all the arrows on the map and all the brown spots. So all those brown spots are those connectivity areas, and those arrows point to where species can move. And so normally we think about wildlife when we think about species movements, so things that move fast and cover large distances, but we're also thinking about plants too, and other vascular species. So additionally, the unit has been identified by the Staying Connected initiative as a priority critical linkage in Vermont. So you may have heard about the culvert replacement they're going to be doing in Waterbury that helps to connect those areas. So that's really exciting. And it's also considered a high resilience, high flow, and recognized biodiversity area by the Nature Conservancy Resilient Land Mapping tool. So this unit, as you all know, is of exceptional ecological importance because it supports a notable diversity of species and natural communities at a local, statewide, and regional scale. So because we can't carry out exhaustive inventories of all species, so even though Bob has been doing this since 2008, he didn't quite get everything while he was out there. We look at to manage individual species by using natural communities. So a natural community is an assemblage of biological organisms, their physical environment. So we're talking about the geology, the hydrology, the climate, disturbance regimes, and the interactions between those two things. So natural communities serve as a surrogate for the biological organisms of which they are composed. So we believe that if examples of all Vermont's natural communities are conserved at the scale at which they naturally occur, most of the species they contain, from the largest trees and mammals to the smallest insects and fungi, those things will also be conserved. So we call this using a coarse filter for management. For all those species that are known to require very specific conditions for their growth, reproduction, or wintering, we use a fine filter or more focused surveys. So as Danny said earlier, we have 27 natural community types in the unit. These range from low elevation floodplain forest to high elevation montane forest. It includes over 17,000 acres of upland and 313 acres of wetland. There are at least 8 rare and 7 uncommon plant species, and there are likely more. The community types include, you can see some photos of these community types, basin swamps, emergent marshes, vernal pools, seeps, montane forest, acidic cliffs, outcrops, talus woodlands, and then of course, extensive hardwood and softwood forest. So this will tell you a little bit about my role in the plan and how we work together as a team. So primary strategy for the unit is to preserve ecological functions on state lands from both the landscape and then project scale perspective. So while the plan provides us with landscape scale actions, the project review scale allows for a more nuanced opportunity for identifying actions to protect biodiversity and ecological function. So this is where the rubber hits the road. As a state lands ecologist, I do this by providing annual and ongoing review of state lands projects to ensure continuity and quality of ecological functions and values, and then also making sure that these projects align with the finalized long-range management plan. So we do this in collaboration. I don't just go out to a site and then tell people what they should do. We go out the site together and discuss what our best step is moving forward. So an example how this plays out, it includes an ecological review of timber harvest. So I might be focused on protecting wetland features, which is something that we do, all of us together, by ensuring adequate buffers around vernal pools and then timing harvest to allow for successful amphibian breeding and movement. To providing recommendations for increasing forest structural complexity and species composition. And we may do this through recommendations for retaining snags and fallen logs. We focus on soil conservation practices and then avoidance and protection of sensitive or unique features as identified in the plan, and then during field-based visits. Because as I said, we don't get to every square inch of this, so we're able to do these field visits to inform us more once we're on site. So a second example is the review of like a trail proposal. And so I might look at it to avoid impacts to rare and threatened plant species or special features and natural communities. And a suggestion may be to propose changes to the trail location, to move the trail this way or that way, to avoid any trampling or disturbance to wildlife feeding areas. So I look forward to talking with you all. Thank you for coming out tonight, of course. You'll find myself and Bob Zano at the ecological station after the presentation. And next you'll hear from Noel Dodge, who is a wildlife biologist with the Fish and Wildlife Department. And Noel will discuss the wildlife habitat highlights of the plan. Thanks.
I warned everyone not to step on that because it was loud and I did it anyway. Welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Noel Dodge, the Berry Office, wildlife biologist. As you can imagine, and Danielle just described, over a management unit of over 18,000 acres of habitat, there's a large variety of wildlife represented. Without reading through, whoops, I didn't actually do the slide. So this is a big slide with lots of little numbers. Hopefully some of you can read that. I'm happy to talk about it in the room afterward as well. But without reading through all the highlights in this slide, it's clear that the diversity of habitat supports robust numbers of a variety of wildlife species. This is only a snapshot, as there are certainly other species and habitat resources not listed here. For example, the 29 mapped vernal pools listed on the slide are only those for which we have data and are aware of. There are most certainly many more additional pools across this large acreage. The same goes for other habitats as well, such as the hard and soft mass feeding areas, primarily American beech, black cherry, and mountain ash, which provide food for a number of different wildlife species from birds to large mammals. Bird species in particular are well represented with 12 popular eBird hotspots within the management unit, including Elmore State Park recording 112 species out of the 164 species of birds identified in eBird on Lake Elmore. If you're unsure what eBird is, feel free to come find me at the poster and we can discuss it. It's essentially citizen science reporting for birds. We do also have a vernal pool monitoring website as well. And if you have vernal pools that you know of that maybe aren't on the map or you don't think they are, feel free to ask me about those as well and we can discuss them. Much of this management unit has no active habitat management and functions in a more or less natural state. In cooperation with FPR staff working on active silvicultural treatments, we incorporate avoidance of important wildlife habitat and work to create and promote other less represented habitat conditions through active management. Much of the active work is directed at promoting and enhancing wildlife food resources by releasing or pruning existing trees that produce wildlife food and create more vegetation structure to increase areas of wildlife refugia and access to forage for a wide variety of wildlife species. This management unit has a large diversity of recreational opportunities with varying levels of intensity of use. That wide diversity and broad landscape footprint can and does overlap with wildlife habitat in several locations. We have been and will continue to work with our FBR colleagues to continue to evaluate recreation and wildlife overlaps in a variety of locations, including Perry Hill, mentioned earlier, where an extensive trail network and increased winter mountain bike use occurs within a deer wintering area. A project that our next speaker, forest recreation specialist with FPR, Walter Opozinski, will describe in further detail.
All right. Guess that's not working, is it? Yeah. Well, I'll be loud, or I'll try, and let me know if you can't hear me. I certainly want to make sure the folks in the back. Okay, I see some thumbs up. Just really quick, how many people recreate in this management unit? Awesome. You are amongst the many. In this next slide, and I have a laser and I will use it. You can see the very fine font there that you're not going to be able to read. All of that is in the management plan. So basically, this data here is a little snapshot of the data that we've pulled in to develop an understanding of how the recreation assets exist currently. And that's in the recreation assessment, which is early on in the draft management plan. What you see here for use is just this amazing stratification of degree of use, which I think is an asset of this management unit. There's places you can get out and you're not going to see anybody because there's very few people that go out there. There's also places that have the high draw, like Muscatine Falls, for instance, where we have the concentrated use. And we have the ability to manage those experiences with the infrastructure. But it all ties back to the usage, really. So what we see, the peak right there, the peak usage we've seen is Elmore in July, the month of July, 6,000 people that month. Popular locations, Perry Hill, Stowe Pinnacle, they're up there. They're north of that line. But then we also have the other side of the range, the eastern side of the range, the Worcester Trail, Middlesex Trail. On average per month, it's probably 150 people. So a really nice balance, I think. But all that use, it all adds up, and that's what we're seeing here. Like part of the data that we pulled in was an infrastructure assessment, trail infrastructure. So we're talking about bridges, punch-in, stone steps, things of the sort. And we did an assessment of the infrastructure that we had in place, and we had an assessment of the places where we wish we had infrastructure. So that top pie chart there, you can see 65% of the infrastructure that we currently have in place in this management unit is considered good, which means we probably don't need to touch it for 10 years. And equally, about 65% of the places that we want to have infrastructure, they need it really bad. It's the red. So with that degree of use, we see the need for management. And we'll be getting into that a little bit more on upcoming slide. Danny and others have spoken of the diversity. That's another beautiful aspect of this management unit, and one of the reasons why so many people come out to use it. We have a variety of trail types. We've got 10 miles of mechanized trail at Perry Hill. We've got sections of Ash Trail, adding up to 6 miles in total, 27 miles of pedestrian use. The locations, I'm not going to go over them in detail. I think probably just seeing the hands, I think many are familiar with it, but it's just a beautiful variety. Was really, you know, as we were doing the assessment, that's what really stood out to me about this management unit. This is one of the units in the district I work in, but when I look at it, just the spectrum, the diversity really stood out to me. So all of this data and our work with our partner groups, because certainly, you know, when we look at the land base and the recreation assets, another thing that's unique about the management unit, we have a high degree of miles that FPR is responsible for. Like, we don't have a partner for the Worcester Range trails, but certainly Perry Hill, it wouldn't be the resource it is without our partnership with Waterbury Area Trails Alliance, the partnership with the Catamount Trail. You know, we have all of these partnerships, and we pull that data in as well. And that rolled in with what we've collected turns into these recreation management strategies and actions. And that you'll find later on in the LRMP. I'd recommend going into Appendix 4, where we have compilation of the objective data that we pulled in. Most of that came 2017, 2019, with help from VYCC survey assessment crew and folks from UVM, Rubenstein School. But the actions that have been compiled fall into these different buckets. Managing a new parcel like Brownsville, you know, what's the history? What can this be? What is the public looking for to gain from the recreation assets that could be managed? Use dispersion, Stowe Pinnacle, we're just seeing a real concentration going up there. How do we manage that? You'll see what we're proposing in those strategies and actions in the LRMP. Sustainability improvements, certainly across the board, you know, managing the access pressure, increased stewardship efforts. That's something that we are working on right now, and you could be a part of. We're developing, revitalizing our trail maintainer program, and certainly if anybody's interested in being a part of that, find me in the recreation corner out in the map area. I'd love to talk to you. But I would really recommend you engaging with the plan and digging into it in detail. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I'm going to introduce Jack O'Rill, who's going to talk about the forest resources.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jack O'Rill, and I'm going to briefly talk about the highlights of the forest resource, the assessment, and how we created the assessment for the LRMP. Worcester Range, it is a big, expansive, diverse land area and an important state resource. Within it, it can be broken up in a number of ways in which we do that in the LRMP, and I hope you read the forest resource section. It can be broken up into 16 different forest types. It has 87 different soil types. and 147 distinct forest stands, and countless other forest features. The assessment was created generally with 3 types of information. We used GIS and remote sensing information, stand level data and information, and district records and district knowledge. The GIS and remote sensing, we were looking at everything, site-specific, slopes, hydrology, soils, aspect, LiDAR data. Stand level information, we were reviewing and analyzing things like species types, size classes, volumes, densities, cover types. And for district records and knowledge, there we were really looking at how it's been used, what is the history of the site, what is access to all of the different sites. So we took all of that information and we analyzed each of the stands to determine the best fit of a management approach. So we identified certain stands where they are best suited for passive or non-commercial management. We identified stands that are suitable for active management now or in the future. And of that second category, we also determined which of those stands are currently suitable for commercial vegetation management. So we did site visits and further analysis of stand conditions, and we identified the areas that are appropriate for considering commercial forest management in this LRMP cycle. And now Dan Singleton is going to highlight the strategies that we're going to use to plan and implement management actions within those stands.
Good evening. I'll be covering the forest resource management strategies and actions along with the climate change adaptation and management slides. As you guys have all been informed, the forest of the Worcester Range Management Unit is really a majestic place, whether you're looking at it from afar at peak foliage or you're fortunate enough to stand under the canopy. This forest provides many ecosystem services, such as clean air and water, carbon storage, wildlife habitat, climate regulation, and also provides many benefits to the people. To maintain these services and benefits, the agency manages its land to meet the many goals and objectives found throughout the long-range management plan. Some of these management goals and strategies are to maintain and enhance the intact and unfragmented forest ecosystems, significant natural communities, wildlife habitat, the development of old forest and structurally complex forest, and to produce traditional and non-traditional forest products through sustainable management. These goals are generally met through both passive and active management. Passively, we retain our lands, keeping forest. We also consider new acquisitions when the opportunities and funding arise, and we also will consider reclassifying areas to prioritize those non-timber goals and objectives. Actively, we are proposing non-timber management in the form of invasive species control, wildlife habitat enhancement, mass and crop tree release, open land and young forest management, and ecosystem restoration. We are also proposing to conduct 13 forest management harvests across 1,900 acres to occur throughout the life of the plan. The forests of the Worcester Range Management Unit are not excluded from the effects of climate change. We expect that climate changes may impact the forests of the Worcester Range Management Unit as both temperature and precipitation levels increase. These changes will generally alter the site conditions, which will create longer growing seasons, making them more favorable to invasive plants, pests and pathogens, and off-site tree species. It'll cause stress to seedlings and sapling regeneration, increase the risk associated with drought and fire, impact operability for management equipment, and increase the risk to forest road infrastructure. To lessen these impacts, mitigation strategies are embedded throughout the long-range management plan, and they aim to maintain and enhance forest ecosystems, soil productivity, and management infrastructure by maintaining healthy and productive forests, improving the forest structure and age class diversity, retaining woody debris in active management areas, matching management equipment to the site, improving forest road infrastructure, and managing against and monitoring non-native plants, pests, and pathogens. And if you have any questions about either of these two sections of the long-range management plan, Jack and I will be out at the assessment or breakout sections, and we'll be glad to help answer your questions. Up next is Protection Forester Chloe Sardonis, who will be talking about forest health.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming tonight. We have a number of different ways that we monitor forest health on the management unit. In 2020, we established monitoring and sampling plots to determine the cause of red pine decline. And one of those plots is located in Perry Hill Block. That's what that picture is there. We continue trapping and survey efforts to find invasive insects not yet present, such as emerald ash borer, which is found throughout the state, but it has not yet been confirmed in any of the towns that this management unit falls within, which is interesting. We're always looking. And then hemlock woolly adelgid, which hasn't come this far north, among plenty of other pests and pathogens that are always coming. We also perform aerial surveys of the entire state in 4-mile transects to map landscape level forest health issues, and these are completed annually. If you have any questions or want more specifics or more information on forest health, come find me in my forest health station. And with that, Brett Latigo from Vermont Fish and Wildlife will discuss water resources and fisheries.
Thanks. I'm just going to give a real brief overview, and then I'm happy to talk fish outside. So really, the management unit is almost entirely headwater streams. So apart from Lake Elmore, which is an important, popular warm water fishery, you're going to find mostly these cold headwater streams with some beaver ponds, wetlands scattered in between, which is an extremely valuable thing from an ecological and fisheries standpoint. Means that there's a lot of groundwater recharge in these areas, and this water stays cold throughout the entire year. So in times when, it's midsummer and lower in the watershed, you're getting warming, challenging for some fish species. That water is staying nice and cold and is a refuge for a lot of these species, particularly brook trout, which are extremely abundant, and they're wild, naturally reproducing, and they've been here since the glaciers receded. So in almost every watershed and every stream out there, we find brook trout, and they're abundant. We found, in addition to brook trout, 12 other species of fish. Most of them are native and no invasive species of concern. So this is really an example of a great cold water fishery that has been here for a long time. It's also near population centers. So folks have an opportunity to travel from Montpelier, get to a stream and drop a line in almost every stream and find brook trout, which is the #1 most popular fish species in Vermont for anglers. So really what we want to do to manage these things is pretty much leave it as it is and make improvements where we can. So forested areas surrounding these streams, keeping activities out of there, and so that those streams can act naturally and move with the forest and recruit trees and wood and all those natural things which just provide that habitat for fish and all those other organisms there. Protecting water quality, which we do through the same thing, and then also improving stream connectivity where we can. So if we have a culvert that's blocking fish movement, replacing those things with bridges and doing that type of work to make it easier for those fish to move up and down those streams. And always trying to get areas where we can get people into those streams where we know are really abundant and easily accessible. So getting those anglers to those places to catch fish. And I'm going to pass it back to Jack.
So I'm going to talk about our land management classification system. We do this, it's an important part of the LRMP process, and we as a district stewardship team created this classification for the Worcester Range. We use this classification system. These categories, each of the separate categories indicate where different levels of use or types of management are going to be emphasized. And this all depends on the site's resources. All of these areas are assessed through the assessments, and each and every acre of A&R land is assigned to one of 4 of these classifications. The first one is the highly sensitive management classification. Second is special management. Third, general management. Fourth, intensive management. The first one, highly sensitive management, those are areas with uncommon or outstanding resources where the protection of those resources is the primary management consideration. The second category, special management. These are places with unique or special resources where the protection or enhancement of those resources is an important management consideration. Number 3, the general management areas. These are areas that can support a wide variety of uses in management actions. And within these areas, the management is focused on sustainable use of the resource and minimizing conflicts. And then intensive management areas, these are highly used areas. These are state parks and trailheads. So within the Worcester Range, about half of the area, and sorry, I don't know why the map is messed. There's supposed to be a map there. I'm going to go back to the other slide, which is also a bit screwed up, and talk you through it. So for this LRMP process, as we worked through this and made these determinations for all the acres on the management unit, we expanded the highly sensitive management areas dramatically. And this is in comparison to the last plan. So for this map, looking at the blue area, those are the highly sensitive areas. And let's see, and then and those areas are expanded. So basically, we more than doubled the number of acres that we have categorized as highly sensitive management areas. The 2 places where we expanded this classification, one is the Moss Glen watershed area, and the other one is the Worcester Range mid-elevation area. The Moss Glen expansion area, we chose this area because it feeds Moss Glen Falls natural area, already a current natural area. There's poor access to it for timber and wildlife management, and it adds low elevation stands to our highly sensitive management classification area. The mid-elevation Worcester Range expansion area, that's an area that has marginal upperability. It tends to have thin, fragile soils, tends to have poor access, and this area adds a number of mid-elevation natural communities to our highly sensitive management classification area. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jim Duncan to conclude the presentation.
So very briefly, there are 3 additional assessments that are included in the plan. We're not going to go over them in detail in this presentation, but just to let you know that they're there and we have staff on hand to talk about these. We do an analysis of legal constraints for all the parcels that we own. There's a range of different legal instruments related to them. We also do a assessment of historic and cultural resources, quite a rich documentation of history on this parcel, and really great resources in our map room to talk about. We also do an analysis and assessment of scenic resources on the parcel. So those are in the plan, and there are people here to talk about those today. So that concludes the resource assessments and the management strategies highlights. Again, not everything was able to be covered here today, but trying to give you an orientation to who you might want to talk to and the types of actions that they're proposing. So coming up next, the purpose for this meeting is to give you an orientation and provide you instruction and support to provide good comment. So for the comment period that is open now until February 2nd, you can submit your comments in several ways. You can do it in person at the table outside this meeting hall. There are people ready to take your comment and record it now if you're so moved. If you would like to submit it by email, you can use the address up there. By mail, there's a physical address listed there and a phone number that you can call in and provide comment, and a form on the website that is a great way to submit as well. Again, you have until February 3rd. So I'd say take tonight to ask questions, learn more about the details of the plan, investigate specific areas that you're interested in. And this is really the kickoff of the public comment period. So there's no need to submit your comments today. Everything that gets in by February 2nd will be considered equally. So if you have any questions from here, I'm looking for my map, which isn't here. We had a map of this area, but hopefully you know if you go out that way and turn left, there are bathrooms, and then there's a cafeteria. That's where all of our resource stations are set up. So in a moment, we'll have our staff migrate over there. You're all welcome to join them and ask specific questions. And I'll stick around for a minute. If you have questions on process or about submitting comments, I'll be up here to answer those. But at this point, we're kind of done with the public or the presentation portion and ready to move to our open house. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next door in the cafeteria. If you have questions on planning process, come see me up here. Thanks.